Welcome to Millennium Daytime Bulletin. I'm Shweta Simar from New Delhi and you're watching Millennium News Channel 24. Today I'm bringing you the latest updates from around the world. Let's begin with today's top headlines. Hamas say no Gaza ceasefire talk unless Israel releases prisoners. Zelensky says he hopes to end Ukraine war this year. More than 200,000 Canadians signed petition to revoke Musk's citizenship. China Xi Jinping stresses strength of Russia ties in Putin call as the Washington warms to Moscow. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif will surpass India or my name isn't Shehbaz claims spark social media backlash. Sudan Army ends 2-year siege of key city. Egypt's large military presence in Sinai Peninsula continues to raise questions. Stock markets face mixed trends as tech slumps, oil steadies and gold holds strong. Bangladesh and Pakistan out of Champions Trophy. No more free lunches at Manchester United as club makes cost-cutting moves that include laying off up to 200 employees. Now let's look at the details. Hamas says talks with Israel about further steps in the Gaza ceasefire deal are conditional on Palestinian prisoners being freed as agreed. Israel said on Sunday it was delaying the release of more than 600 Palestinians in return for 6 living and 4 dead hostages who had been freed, accusing Hamas of repeated violation, including humiliating handover ceremonies. A senior Hamas official said the decision exposed the entire agreement to grave danger and called on the mediators, especially the United States, to pressure Israel. The deal's first phase and temporary 6-week truce is set to expire on Saturday, but indirect negotiation on the second phase and an end to the war have not yet begun. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also warned that the ceasefire was precarious and that a resumption of hostilities must be avoided at all costs. He also called for the dignified release of all remaining hostages. On Saturday, the start of the 6th and the final week of the ceasefire deal's first phase, Hamas released 6 living Israeli hostages. As with many of the previous handovers, 5 of them were led onto stages beside armed fighters before being transferred to the Red Cross and then taken to Israel. Later, Hamas posted a video of 2 other hostages in a vehicle watching one of the handover ceremonies and appearing to plead with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to get them out. A forum representing the hostages' families condemned the video as a sickening display of cruelty. There was already fury in Israel after Hamas returned the bodies of 4 hostages earlier in the week, including those of the Shiri Bibas and her 2 young sons, Ariel and Kafir, who were abducted during the 7 October 2023 attacks on Israel. It emerged on Friday that Hamas had handed over the remains of the Palestinian women rather than those of the Miss Bibas. The group said that it had been a mistake and transferred that Mrs. Biba's body later that day. Israeli authorities also said a post-mortem had shown that Ariel and Kafir captors killed the boys with their bare hand, contradicting Hamas' claim that they died in an Israeli strike. Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky has said, "We hope that this war can finish this year on the 3rd anniversary of the Russia's full-scale invasion." But he warned that Ukraine Ukraine needs security guarantees to prevent Moscow returning, suggesting European Union and NATO membership will also help. Russia has consistently opposed the idea of Ukraine joining NATO. Earlier, Zelensky said a peace deal with Russia could start with a full-scale exchange of prisoners of war. Zelensky was speaking at a summit of European leaders plus Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who were in Kyiv to show their support for the Ukraine. Speaking at the news conference, Zelensky was asked what his hopes were for Ukraine and its people after 3 years of war. "We hope that we can finish the war this year," he responded, adding that it had been very difficult for the whole nation to continue with this war. In the short term, he said Ukraine needed security guarantees to prevent Russia returning in years to come. Joining the European Union and NATO would soon be of help very much, he added. Zelensky recently said that he would be willing to stand down as president if the Ukraine was made a member of NATO in return. Russia said it would not accept this as a part of any peace deal. He was asked about the United States and his relationship with the President Donald Trump several times but did not respond directly. Zelensky said he hoped that the United States will continue support like all the partners. Last week, Trump called the Ukrainian president a dictator and said he had done a terrible job of leading Ukraine. It follows Zelensky saying Trump was living in a disinformation space governed by Moscow. Trump has repeatedly called for a quick peace and end to hostilities that would see Ukraine make considerable concessions to Russia. Zelensky also said a complete prisoner of war exchange with the Russia could be the start of ending the war. There have been 60 prisoners exchanged between the two sides since the war began, including one in December involving hundreds of prisoners swapped. More than 200,000 people from Canada have signed a parliamentary petition calling for the country to strip Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship because of the tech billionaire's alliance with the Donald Trump, who has spent his second presidency repeatedly threatening to conquer its independent neighbor to the north, that is, Canada, and turn it into the 51st state. The British Columbia author Qualia Reid launched the petition in Canada's House of Commons, where it was sponsored by the New Democrat parliamentary member and avid Musk critic Charlie Angus, as the Canadian press first reported over the weekend. Born in South Africa and owning US companies including the electric vehicle maker Tesla, aerospace company that is SpaceX, and the social media platform X, formerly Twitter, Musk has Canadian citizenship through his mother, also the model and dietitian Mae Musk, who is from the capital Regina. He has been crusading to slash the US federal government's size at the behest of the US president, who has consistently challenged Canada's sovereignty since returning to the White House for a second presidential term on the 20th of January. Reid's petition, filed on 20 February, accuses Musk of having engaged in activities that go against the national interest of Canada by acting as an advisor to Trump. Trump has invited the scorn of Canada 40 million residents by making threats about imposing steep tariff on Canadian product and openly boasting about having the US annex the country, including shortly before its national hockey team defeated a selection of US opponent in a politically charged 20 February tournament final. The petition asserts that Musk's alignment with Trump makes him a member of a foreign government that is attempting to erase Canadian sovereignty. It asks the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to take away Musk's Canadian passport and revoke his citizenship with immediate effect. Also, Trump has often mocked Trudeau as governor, the title given to the US state's chief executives. And Musk wrote on X, the social media platform that he bought in 2022 for the $44 billion, to relish Trudeau's announcement in January that he would resign as the head of Canada's Liberal Party after it selected a new leader, with the tech billionaire praising clips of the Canadian Conservative Party chief Pierre Poilievre. China and Russia cannot be moved away from one another, Chinese leader Xi Jinping told his counterpart Vladimir Putin on Monday in his first phone call since the US President Donald Trump upended the American foreign policy with a sweeping pivot toward Moscow as he pushes for peace in Ukraine. The call, which took place at the Kyiv, marked the third anniversary of the Russia's brutal invasion, stands as a clear message from Beijing that its relationship with the key diplomatic partner will not be shaken by Washington's warming relationship with the Kremlin. History and reality show that China and Russia are good neighbors and that cannot be moved away, and true friends who share weal and woe. Also, Xi Jinping, who told Putin, according to the China state news agency Xinhua, evoking a phrase that Chinese leader had used to mark the symbolically significant 70th anniversary of their diplomatic ties in 2019. The development strategies and foreign policies of China and Russia are for the long term, he added, reiterating that their tie wouldn't be influenced by any third party. Despite changes in the international situation, China-Russia relationship will proceed with ease, the Chinese leader said. The Kremlin described the call as warm and friendly in its readout, but did not elaborate on the strength of their tie to the same degree as Beijing's. The leader particularly emphasized that Russia-Chinese foreign policy link is the most important stabilizing factor in world affairs. It is strategic in nature, it is not subject to external influence, and is not directly against anyone, the Kremlin said. The closely anticipated call between the close partner comes as Moscow's position on the international stage has undergone a significant transformation in recent weeks as Trump has sought to bring Putin alongside in his push to end the fighting in Ukraine, in a significant shift of American policy. Trump administration officials met Russian counterpart in Saudi Arabia last week after signaling they can and they could cede to some of the Moscow's key demands, raising concern that peace would be brokered over the heads of Kyiv and its European partners. Trump had also parroted Kremlin rhetoric about the war and launched a barrage of criticism against the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Putin updated Xi on the latest contacts between China and Russia and the US during their call, according to the readouts from both sides. Xi said that China is pleased to see Russia and other parties concerned making positive efforts to resolve the crisis, according to Xinhua, the news agency. We'll have to see how the issues unfold in a couple of more weeks. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has declared his ambition to make Pakistan a greater nation than India, owing relentless effort to achieve this goal. If we didn't leave India behind, then my name is not Shehbaz Sharif. We will work day and night. A day will come when we will make Pakistan a great nation and move ahead of India, Sharif declared while addressing a large crowd in Dera Ghazi Khan. During his visit to Dera Ghazi Khan, Sharif reportedly inaugurated several development projects aimed at improving infrastructure and public services. He reiterated his commitment to resolving Pakistan's economic and social challenges, though actively governance and reforms will be a problem. We will not be relying on loans anymore. Under my leadership, Pakistan will build a self-sustaining economy that stands on its own feet, he stated. The Prime Minister also highlighted a significant drop in inflation, claiming that it has decreased from 40% when his government took charge to just 2% at present. Sharif's remark on surpassing India came just weeks after he reiterated his call for diplomatic engagement with the New Delhi. Speaking at his special session on the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir Legislative Assembly on Kashmir Solidarity Day, he urged India to engage in dialogue to resolve all outstanding issues, including Kashmir. Pakistan remains committed to the Kashmiri cause. We urge India to move beyond the August 5, 2019 decision and engage in talks as per commitment made by the United Nations, he said. said, referring to the abrogation of Article 370, which revoked the special status of Jammu and Kashmir and bifurcated it into two territories, that is Pakistan, and also that Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's recent statement about surpassing India in development has sparked a wave of reaction on social media platforms. Many users criticized his remark, urging him to focus on domestic challenges instead. One social media user highlighted the lack of substantive policy discussion in Sharif's speech, stating, "Focus on your own people, fix basics, stop dreaming about defeating India. Look at the manifestos of Indian parties. They seriously discuss growth strategies and area. His lecture has no talks of growth, education, infra or health, just hollow filmy lines with no real meaning." Several users pointed to Pakistan's ongoing economic crisis and health challenges, urging the government to address them before making grand claims. One user also remarked, "First defeat dengue, debt and drought that before aiming for India to defeat." Also, another user presented a mathematical perspective on Sharif's claim, saying, "A simple math, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif is 73 now, and even if we assume that he will remain in power till he is 85, he pledges to overtake India in development in 12 years. The Sudanese army say it has broken a nearly 2-year siege imposed by the Parliamentary Rapid Support Forces, that is the RSF, on the key southern state capital of El Obeid. The breakthrough came hours after the RSF signaled a political charter in the Kenyan capital Nairobi to establish a breakaway government in areas under its control. The RSF and the army have begun and have been in a vicious battle for power since April 2023, with tens of thousands of people killed and millions forced from their home. Also, the war has split the country, with the army controlling the north and the east, while the RSF hold most of the Darfur region in the west and parts of the south. El Obeid, the capital of the North Kordofan state, in a strategic hub connecting the capital Khartoum to Darfur. This is the latest army advance in recent week following the recapture of several parts of Khartoum from the RSF. There was jubilation on the streets as Sudanese soldiers marched into the city. A military spokesman, Nabil Abdallah, confirmed the gains in a statement, saying army forces had destroyed RSF units. Finance Minister Jibril Ibrahim said that the move was a massive step in lifting the RSF siege of El Fasher, the capital of the northern Darfur province, and would also allow the delivery of humanitarian aid to Kordofan. She said the RSF has held the civilians captive for nearly 2 years in the city. The situation there was horrific. She said that, adding, there have been no medical or food aid in the area, considered to be very risky in terms of famine and malnutrition. She said that she hoped more aid would now be allowed in. Lifting the siege brings life back to the city. Ahmed Hussain, a 53-year-old trader in El Obeid, told the AFP news agency. Ms. Abdulmillah said that the army was making serious groundwork in terms of moving towards the west, which is where the RSF is mainly centered. The latest fighting around El Fasher has forced medical charity Doctors Without Borders, that is MSF, to halt operation at Zamzam, a famine-stricken camp nearby which houses about 500,000 displaced people. MSF said it was a heartbreaking decision, but it had little choice because it was too dangerous for its staff to operate there. The considerable Egyptian military presence in the Sinai Peninsula and the ongoing infrastructure work has some observers in the Israel alarmed. Officially, the Israeli Defense Establishment says the coordination between the two militaries remain tight and contributes to regional stability. However, the concentration of forces in the Sinai is not easily explained by the previous justifications, such as fighting ISIS, and raises the more troubling, seldom spoken possibility that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and his army view Israel as a potential future adversary. Also, Egyptian sources reveal that Cairo conveyed an explicit warning to Israel in the military coordination meeting that has continued to stay off the IDF forces in the Philadelphia corridor on Gaza border, and Egypt would be considered a violation of the Camp David, that is the peace agreement between Israel and the Egypt would not be obligated to the agreement in the ongoing coordination regarding the situation of its forces on the border. The same report stated that the Egyptian sources emphasized that Egypt's message are based on the adherence of the Palestinian factions to the clauses of the ceasefire agreement, on Cairo's refusal to create a new geographic reality, and on the Israeli claim that it possibly to eliminate the Hamas. Israel Defense Establishment, for its part, pointed to long-standing cooperation mechanisms that remain in place despite the reports of tension. Israeli defense sources have affirmed that the security coordination between Cairo and Jerusalem was and remains tight, as it has been for years, adding that the security coordination reflects the common security interest of both centuries for regional stability and preserving national security. Moshe Fuzaloy, a research associate at the Misagav Institute of National Security and Zionist Strategy and a former Shin Bet intelligence officer who served in the senior roles in the organization, including as a member of its executive directorate, told JNS on Wednesday. Israel approved for Egypt on different occasions to bring forces into Sinai in excess of the permitted in the peace treaty, and we are today with a massive order of battle of the Egyptian army in Sinai. Now bringing you latest updates on today's market trends. The stock market indices displayed in the picture represent the mixed performance across various global markets. In the United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, that is the Dow, showed a slight increase and improvement of 0.03%, that is 33.19 points, indicating a relatively stable trading session. However, the broader S&P 500 index declined by 29.88 points or 0.50%, reflecting the negative sentiments in the large cap stocks. The technology heavy Nasdaq experienced a significant drop of 237.08 points or 1.21%, signaling a downturn in the tech sector. Additionally, the Russell 2000, which tracks small cap stocks, fell by 17.08 points or 0.78%, suggesting struggles in the smaller companies. Meanwhile, market volatility, as represented by the VIX, rose 4.23% to 15.98, indicating increased uncertainty among investors. In Canada, the S&P TSX Composite Index showed marginal gains, rising by 4.23 points or 0.02%, reflecting a stable performance in the Canadian stock market. However, the S&P TSX 60, which tracks large cap stocks, saw a slight decline of 0.012% or 0.01%, indicating mixed result among major Canadian companies. The Brazilian stock market, represented by the Bovespa index, saw a substantial decline of 1726.68 points or 1.36%, highlighting a sharp downturn and potential economic or political concern impacting investor confidence. Similarly, Childs S&P IPSA index saw a minor decline of 0.42 points or 0.01%, indicating minimal movement in the Chilean market. Finally, Mexico's S&P BMV IPC index dropped by 34.34 points or 0.06%, reflecting slight downward pressure in the Mexican stock market. Overall, the global market displayed a mix of modest gains and notable losses, with the technology stocks in the United States and Brazil market facing significant downward trend while volatility remained elevated. The commodities market displayed a range of price movement across energy, metal and agricultural product, indicating shifts in supply, demand and investor sentiment. In the energy sector, WTI crude oil saw a modest increase of 0.0 $0.18 or 0.25%, bringing its price to $70.88. The movement suggests stability in the oil market with potential factors such as the geopolitical tensions, OPEC plus countries' production decision, or fluctuation in global demand influencing the price. Similarly, Brent crude oil, that is BZ000, that has been serving as an international benchmark for oil prices, experienced a slight gain of $0.11 or 0.15%, reaching $74.89. Brent crude oil remains relatively higher than WTI due to its broader global demand, often reflecting macroeconomic condition and trade partners. Also, in contrast, natural gas experienced a decline, falling $0.03 or 0.85% to $3.95. This drop indicates a weakening in natural gas prices, which could be attributed to lower seasonal demand, increasing supply levels, or reduced energy consumption forecast. With a 52-week range of $1.64 to $4.48, natural gas has experienced significant volatility, reflecting its sensitivity to weather patterns, storage level, and shift in the global energy market. Turning to the previous metal sector, gold recorded a moderate increase of $3.85 or 0.12%, bringing its price to $2,966.70. Gold remains a favored that has been the asset for investors seeking stability, especially during times of economic uncertainty or inflationary pressures. With a 52-week range between $2,000 and $2,900, the metal is near its upper trading range, signaling continued interest from investors as a hedge against currency devaluation or market instability. Likewise, silver gained $0.06, that is 0.19%, reaching to $32.66. Silver price movement offer correlate with the industrial demand and investor sentiment towards safe haven assets. Given its 52 weeks of $22.41 to $35, silver is also trading towards the higher end of its yearly performance, indicating sustained interest in the precious metals. In the agriculture sector, soya bean saw a slight increase of $0.03 or 0.26%, bringing its price to $10.50. Soybean prices are influenced by factors such as weather condition, crop yield, global demand, and trade policies, particularly between major producers like the United States and China. The commodity's 52-week range to $9.45 to $12 shows that it has been remaining relatively stable. We'll be right back after a short break. I'm Shweta Simar from New Delhi, and you're watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome back after the break. I'm Shweta Simar, and you're watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin. Now let's look at some sports highlights. In the 12th over of the New Zealand chase, Rachin Ravindra dug out of a full ball to short mid-wicket and took a few steps down the track before turning back. Tanzid Hassan had a shy at that stump and would have found the batsman out of his ground, but he missed the stump. And that was that. Not just Bangladesh chances in the ICC Champions Trophy, but also those of Pakistan, chasing a modest target of 237 on a decent Rawalpindi pitch. On Monday, the Kiwis had lost lost Will Young and Kane Williamson with just 15 runs on the board. Had Tanzid hit the stumps, New Zealand would have been 57 on 3 with Ravindra back in the pavilion for 25. As it turned out, Ravindra returning to the side after a horrific hit to the forehead hit a classy 112 of 104 balls, replete with 12-4 and a big 6 as the Kiwis secured a facile 5 wickets win with 23 balls to spare to enter the semi-finale. Taking India along with them, Sunday's contest between the two sides will decide the winner of the group. The 4-wicket stand worth 129 between Ravindra and ever-reliable Tom Latham 55 broke the back of the chase. As the Kiwis approached the target at a rapid rate, the Bangladesh player seemed to lose interest and just went through the motions. Not that the match was lost in the second half. Despite losing 3 wickets for 72, New Zealand were never under run rate pressure as they adopted rotated strike while finding boundary options wherever they wanted. Matches in Pakistan have seen much higher scores than those in Dubai, and 236 was never going to be enough. Manchester United is looking to cut jobs and is reportedly closing the staff canteen at the Old Trafford. The free lunches currently being offered to the staff will be replaced by fruit. The measure comes after 5 straight years of financial losses for the club. British media reported that as part of cost-cutting measures, even as the Manchester United Carrington training base, only players will receive lunch as gratuities while the staff members will be offered soup and bread. The Guardian reported that the Manchester United management is hoping to save £1 million by ending free lunches. The report added that the canteen at the Old Trafford is expected to be shut down at the end of the week. The Associated Press reported that the club could make as many as 200 jobs redundant. Manchester United made around 250 roles redundant in the first wave of saving last year, and the British billionaire Jim Ratcliffe paid $1.3 billion for an initial 25% stake in the club and assumed control of its soccer operation. In the first wave of redundancies, the club has said that there would be no further layoffs. That's all for now. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for more updates. Log in to stay updated with the latest news on the social media platforms Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok at Millennium News 24. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel Millennium News 24. You can watch us on Android and iOS devices as well as on Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV and all smart TV platforms. Enjoy entertainment and latest news with us. Download the Millennium TV app, Millennium TV USA for Android and Millennium News on Google. Thank you for being part of Millennium News Channel 24.